Hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful night tonight. It's been a long time in, due to computer troubles, but I've been able to get things running again. So tonight, I'll be reacting to Operation Smash and Grab Doom Fate Humanity Episode 2 by KRissCHu's Shed. If you're not following in his channel, I highly recommend you do. I've been having fun listening to the story so far. And my favorite characters from it thus far are the Commissar and the Mordian Iron Guard guardsmen. They're both very fun.
It would seem the Emperor's favor still loomed over the newly formed squad, as the evening was blissfully uneventful. The worst Ritter had to go through during his shift was the constant feeling that everyone else in the room was secretly glaring at him, even though he was sure they were asleep. An insignificant thought in the grand scheme of things, but it was undeniable that he experienced a surge of relief when he switched out with Johann. Which in turn was a somewhat unpleasant affair due to the Krieger's haughty demeanor.
Which, to be fair, Kriegers are quite insular, so it's kinda to be expected, to be honest.
Overall, it was a dreamless night for the Brotelian. His consciousness was coaxed out into existence by someone kicking him in the soles of his boots. A sense of déjà vu washed over him as he identified Lawrence's visage when he looked up.
Rise and shine, Private. You're not sneaking any more shut-eye. Gear up before the commissar finds you a finger for tardiness.
Who is this man and what has he done with the sergeant? Bobson thought, as the man who turned and left his field of view felt unrecognizable. Even though they had only spent a day with each other, it was hard for him to imagine Dusk being this chipper, even after a good night's sleep. The change was simply too drastic for his perception to immediately adjust to.
Well, it's funny what, 72 hours worth of sleep deprivation will do to you. And I'm willing to bet that sleep he got was probably the best sleep of his life, considering how tired he was.
With some effort, he pushed those thoughts back in his mind for now, and hastily put on his helmet, then picked up the large rucksack that had been left by his side, clearly being the load he was set to carry with himself, and followed after Lawrence down the corridor, entering into the lobby. There he met up with everyone else who hefted similar loads. All of the supplies that he had seen on the stretcher and subsequently in the janitorium had seemed quite intimidating to Richard, but with the greater available manpower, that was at least dashed.
Well, ain't this delightful? Sleeping Beauty decided to join us.
Katerina mockingly spoke when she noticed the Brotelian, following which she walked right up to him and leaned in to glare in his face.
Sleep in again, and you lose a ring finger. Understood, maggot?
Oh, so he wasn't joking when he said the commissar might find him a finger for tardiness.
Yeah.
Oh, also, might add, when the commissar looks directly toward at someone like that, her gaze is very unnerving, and I don't just mean in the way that commissars normally are unnerving but there's just something uncanny about it.
Yes, sir. It won't bear repeating, sir.
Wordlessly, the commissar stepped away from the panicked private and returned to her position in between the rest of the squad.
With everyone finally assembled, we can begin this briefing in earnest. The matter of rationing the supplies has been settled, so we can proceed with the next topic on the itinerary. Namely, where the squad will be advancing to in regards to deployment.
Permission to inquiry, sir.
Ramil spoke up. Upon receiving confirmation from Katerina, he continued.
I don't mean to be a sower of doubt, but if the Cadian and the monkey's words from this air to be believed, we appear to be on our own. Or do you know of any surviving resistance pockets?
Yes, and no. We don't know of any active resistance pockets as we lost communication at the same time as everyone else on board. Whether intentionally or by dumb luck, I still hate it when the Greenskins accomplish anything moderately intelligent, like disabling all the communication arrays in orbit in this case.
You know, if the orcs running around happen to be blood axes or death skulls, then I would very much believe that knocking out the communications was intentional. Blood axes are, well, the most un-orky of orcs in that they're quite sneaky and strategic and disciplined. And well, Death Skulls prefer the looting to the fighting, so and are known for stealing anything and everything. So, well, yeah.
However, what we have available as guidance is the invasion response plan implemented among the Amory worlds in the various subsectors surrounding KRissCHu's, and later implemented in some others in the nearby segmentus after the kerfuffle that took place on Vrax Prime nearly a century ago.
Ah, yes. Vrax Prime and that whole business involving a cardinal, chaos, rebellion against the Imperium, all that fun stuff.
Upon the mention of that infernal world's name, the air of the gathering thickened uncomfortably. A couple of gazes briefly glanced at the Krieger, while others just remained statuesque. And lastly, the Catachan chuckled lightly.
What's so funny, Jungle Boy?
Nothing much. I just still say that we could have wrapped that up in 10, and without getting any of the big knives involved.
A low growl escaped Johann in response to that comment, but Gus paid it no heed as he stood at attention.
Oh yeah, because if I remember correctly, a lot of Kriegers were brought in order to lay siege to Vrax since there was a lot of fortifications, several rings of the stuff that had to be sieged. Although I do wonder if the monkey over there is when he says the big knives, if he's referring to the Space Marines, since if I remember correctly, the Dark Angel showed up on Vrax, or if he means some Catachan unit.
Bobson, on the other hand, was thoroughly confused by it all as he tried to glean any clarification by looking between everyone else. When he could find none, he meekly asked,
What is Vax Prime and the kerfuffle that took place on it?
He turned himself in Johann's direction.
Did it involve your core?
Kost scowled as he heard the junior voice his ignorance, but remained quiet as Katerina shot the private's inquiry down with her response.
No one here has the time to explain it all to you, Private. If you live through this, find yourself some other gas mask enjoyer that has a voice as tolerable as Gruber's and have them tell you of it. The only thing you need to know is that Vrax Prime was an armory world just like Brotal. But unlike your dirt bowl, it made the exceptionally poor decision to try rebelling against the Imperium, resulting in a long siege for the purpose of recovering all of the Vagirs stored upon it. Since then, a particular response has been implemented among many armory worlds, including Brotal, in order to avoid similar shit shows happening again.
Arconi briefly turned to the Mordian.
Kost, take it out for display.
As the captain opened the rucksack he had been carrying and searched in it, the commissar motioned for everyone to spread out. Shortly after, Dan produced a small device and held it out, as he pressed a button on its bottom, which caused it to erupt with a light, causing Richard a small fright, which then took the shape of a spherical hololith projection. After looking it over, Bobson realized that the projection was depicting the planet of Brotel itself, giving a clear view of its geographical layout and the man-made superstructures upon it.
I am specifically referring to the Malus Rex Kagori Directive, named after one Marshal Armin Kagori, a prominent leader during the Siege of Rex, who consulted on its development, and Lord Inquisitor Hector Rex, who oversaw the end of the campaign and requisitioned the drafting of the directive in the first place. Per its tenets, Vagirs to be secretly stored at a different height than the ones intended to operate the planet-side starports, and in case of invasion or sabotage, all Imperial forces are to converge into a stockpile hive to both protect and have easy access to the supplies, while holding out for as long as possible against the enemy.
Ah, so no runaway cardinals and their followers getting their hands on heavy armaments.
Ferogrod.
Johann and Gargoda reflexively uttered at the same time, before turning their heads to look at each other. While the Armageddon smirked at her squadmate, the Krieger simply turned his point of view away from her and back onto the projection, though the first lieutenant was sure he had rolled his eyes under his mask.
Alright, a destination is good, but do we even know where ours is?
Ramil pondered as he reviewed the projection, then turned to face Katerina.
Well, you're in luck, as I happen to be among the command staff deemed worthy to have the storage facilities revealed to them.
She spoke with a hint of pride in her tone as she stepped forward and pointed the tip of her sword to one of the hive cities, positioned in the southern hemisphere of Brotel, stationed in relatively close proximity to one of the oceans.
Hive Tyheiden?
Richard uttered in surprise.
Are you sure? Isn't it supposed to just be a warden outpost against piracy that also holds in marine resources?
If that is all you know of it, that means that the officials of your ward were actually competent in their job.
Yeah, I would agree. The fact that he doesn't know is a good sign.
Any forces with active command staff should already be making their way to Tyheiden and further bolstering its defenses, while the out-of-the-way location should cause the Greenskins to not immediately rush towards it.
Although, knowing the orcs, if the orcs were to notice, say, large formations of Imperial Guard or PDF forces converging on the hive, they actually might be attracted to the location for no other reason than they're looking for a good fight.
Our problem, however, comes in the fact that while our rallying point is here...
As her words trailed off, Katerina walked around the projection and lifted up her sword on a path stretching over a large piece of desert, a mountain range, and a vast expanse of wasteland, until its tip reached a different hive city, distinguished by its exceptionally high spires.
We are stuck here, at Hive Skypiercer.
Next, she sheathed her blade and turned to face the rest of the squad.
No, we have a rather vexing choice to make. How to get to Tyheiden, and, ideally, not die until we are within its walls in order to support the defense efforts there. As none here are aeronautica elements, we are left with two equally shit choices. Either commandeer a land vehicle and enough fuel for it, then attempt to cross above ground, while evading the Xenos to the best of our ability, or...
Her gaze slowly moved down from the squad's faces and towards the ground beneath them for several moments, before lifting once again.
make our way down into the Underhive, by trying to avoid any of the unholy vermin that dwell within. Then hope and pray to the God Emperor that the underground tram system that connects the hives are still operational and unoccupied.
Normal men may have turned to murmuring amongst each other upon receiving such news, but the guardsmen stood resolute as they processed the information. The stillness of the situation would lift as Gargota presented her reasoning.
I believe it would be more optimal to go above ground. Even if we are not able to get a vehicle, between myself and Wildknife, we will be able to successfully navigate the group through the wilderness.
Huh. That'd be like hoping the Kidian can fix the trams in the deeps just because he knows how to use pliers better than your average menial. It's a fantasy that I wouldn't entrust my life to.
Both the Catachan and the Maccabian stifled a chuckle at the Krieger's words. Before any additional reaction could be made, Kost spoke up as well.
A fantasy it might be, but the tram tunnels, even if devoid of their namesake being active, would make the trek significantly less complicated, as the majority of it being done through them will just be walking forward.
Breaking the mold of improv.
Although, while it would be handy to just know that you just have to keep walking forward until you find an exit. Again, as earlier mentioned, hoping that there's nothing down there because there might be orcs and hive gangers. And even if there aren't orcs, again, hive gangers could still be a problem.
From two monologues, Lawrence raised his hand and said,
Actually, also, being that the tunnels are straight also means that if they did get ambushed by orcs down there, it probably, well, orcs or, hive gangers, either way, it would be a bit... It would make things a bit worse because there's probably not much cover inside a tram tunnel, well, unless there's some collapsed debris or an overturned tram. And, well, relatively tight spaces. And I say relatively, because as far as we're going navigating a firefight would go, it would make it significantly easier for even the orcs who have no concept of aiming to actually land a hit.
Permission to inquiry, sir?
Granted.
This might be presumptuous of me, but I had the impression that you already had the choice made for us. Is there any specific reason for your hesitation and request for input?
A smirk colored Arconi's face at the inquiry as she turned her head to look at Wildknife and instructed.
Share your report with the rest of the squad, guardsman.
The Catachan's face shifted into a stoic display as he reported, without taking his gaze off of the projection.
Approximately 40 minutes before the conclusion of my shift, I became aware of a loud noise outside of the building, so I extracted myself out of the premises to investigate. Upon exiting the facility and climbing on top of it, I was able to clearly identify the sound as the roar of engines, mixed in with the indiscernible shouts and cackling usually done by the greenskins. While I wasn't able to establish a visual, based off the sound it must have been a convoy of at least 5 vehicles, which was headed northwest of our current position. If given a couple of hours, I should be able to track them down.
Your initiative is appreciated, but that may not be necessary if we know where they could be headed.
Arconi once again stepped forward towards Bobson, but this time it was not with the intention of intimidating him, as she asked.
If you're familiar with this area, do you know of anything the greenskins might be interested in the direction given by the monkey?
The
Brotelian stammered as his eyes darted between the commissar and the second lieutenant for a few moments, before he finally took a deep breath and spoke properly.
Given the signs of abundant vegetation beneath the rubble of this hideout, I believe this is one of the greenhouse stations. If it is the station responsible for the mid-spire's ventilation, then the only thing of import northwest of it would be the Empress Springfields. They house a series of hangars and storage facilities serviced by medium to heavy urban combat vehicles and transports.
Satisfied with the response, she turned to face everyone once again.
If we pursue this convoy to these fields, it is bound to lead to conflict, but also hardware and fuel stores, which can simplify our choices by adding some convenience to either option, should we be able to claim them.
She then glanced at Lawrence specifically, her visage giving off the impression of pride that he had seemingly found her out, and even called her out.
A decision has most certainly been made, Sergeant. As your superior, responsible for your lives and how to best spend them, I will admit this will be a high-risk, high-reward gamble. So I ask all of you, would any of you prefer your boat round to the head now? Or would you like to give the Xenos a taste of Rach's fury?
Nobody uttered a sound. Instead, one after the other, the guardsmen lined up with their weapons at the ready.
I will say that given that the orcs have several hours head start on them and were using vehicles, it is entirely possible that the hangars have already been stripped clean and that these speed freaks have... Oh, and for those who don't know, speed freaks are the orcs who like to go fast, and they're generally the ones who drive their vehicles. But yeah, it's entirely possible that the speed freaks could have picked the entire place clean and be long gone by now, with vehicles and fuel and anything else there could be. But if there is something there, it would indeed be very helpful. Although I still think it would probably be smarter to use the tram tunnels compared to going above ground, despite the danger of orcs and hive gangers being down there for no other reason than that above ground, well, there's speed freaks going around now, and who knows how many more of them will be going around with the vehicles they'll have grabbed. Not to mention that they'll also have to cross a mountain, which if they want to go over that, chances are they'd have to abandon their vehicles unless there's a tunnel cutting through it.
Last to do so was Bobson, but that was only because it took him a bit longer to understand the gesture before joining the line himself. All of them bore grim looks of determination, or at least Katerina was certain that Romeo and Johann matched their squad mates behind their masks. This time she permitted herself a small chuckle before stating,
Let's disturb their calm with some nice, fast, and violent escalation of hostilities.
The commissar dramatically turned around and began walking out of the building. Wordlessly, Kost shut off the hololith, returned to his rucksack on his back, and walked after her, followed by the rest.
Distribute today's rations to each other and get a move on. We advance for Operation Smash and Grab.
Whatever notion of comfort existed in this haggard ruin would be abandoned this morning, as the whole squad ventured out of it. The only delay to their march was the initial distribution of rations, a single protein pack with a quarter-liter of water, which were hastily consumed on the go.
Oh, no rat dust.
While the journey from the greenhouse station to the hangar fields took nearly 6 hours, it was a significantly smoother trek than the initial one Richard had undertaken with Lawrence, by virtue of the group utilizing the intact sections of highway and the expertise of the commandos when it came to navigating difficult terrain. He was more than happy to sing Gargota's praises, but despite his understandable dislike of Gus, Bobson had to grudgingly commend his skills as well. Of course, nothing was actually voiced as the squad traveled as secretively as possible, leaving talking to only be done when absolutely necessary, and only by the staff critical for this segment of the mission, a responsibility that the private did not share. On their way, they encountered and disposed of a handful of Gretchen, barely a dozen at most, if one cared to count, who were all thankfully just scattered individually or in pairs, likely for the purpose of scouting. The most difficult challenge the squad faced, however, had to be the unholy stench. Despite the carrion predations of the Xenos, there were still uncountable bodies of innocent Imperial citizens buried in the destruction wrought by the Space Hulks and the subsequent greenskin attacks. Finding them all would be an impossible task, but after 4 days, their presence, or more specifically, their decay, was making itself abundantly clear. It was further enhanced by the leftover filth of the orcoids and by the ventilation vents, which by now had begun failing in their purpose as no one was maintaining them. Whenever the squad had to traverse the ruin of a hab block, the concentrated miasma of the deceased made everyone's stomach nearly empty out their rations. At least that is what Richard, the only one who showed visible signs of it, assumed, as he could not believe that a normal human could withstand such an assault on their respiratory system.
If he ends up graduating from PDF and joining the Imperial Guard, oh boy, do I feel sorry for him if he has to fight Nerg-like cultists. Although I will say, the others probably are faring better, not just because we've got a Krieger who actually has a gas mask, but also because, well, given the prevalence of trench warfare in 40k, the rest of them have probably at some point ended up in a situation where they've just been surrounded by corpses, whether that of other Imperial Guardsmen or that of the enemy.
The only exception to it that his mind could conceive was Gruba, exclusively due to his respirator and gas mask. In a moment of blissful ignorance of the cultures beyond his homeworld, the Brotelian absent-mindedly wished that he himself had been a Krieger, if only to just have access to a ventilated face covering for this occasion. Eventually, this period of suffering would end as the squad apparently reached their destination. The stench itself was still present, but with their target in reach, their will for vengeance against the alien invaders managed to overtake the nausea caused by the air quality. All in all, it was surprising how sparse the defenses to the Emperor's Springfields were. In fact, there wasn't really anything they could call defenses that stood in the Guardsmen's way. Yes, the Greenskins were inferior creatures to the glory of humanity in every way, but Katerina had expected at least marginal resistance to such a notable trove of assets.
Sounds then and like they had indeed grabbed everything they could want and just left.
The true nature of the situation revealed itself to her when they set foot into the fields proper and began a sweep of their entry point. Desolate and empty, every hangar they passed by was picked clean, with nothing left in it. Apparently, the enemy had swept over the fields like a locust tide, stripping the resources and scurrying off. Curses began to boil in everyone's minds, but before they could be uttered, a distant detail stifled them. Noise.
Looks like the work of Death Skulls then. They're the kind of orcs who, well, I mentioned earlier they enjoy looting. They're also the kind who will snatch everything that isn't nailed down, then come back, take the nails, and then take everything that was formerly nailed down.
Swiftly and silently, the 8 scurried towards it. In their advance, they came before an elevation created by the corpses of several collapsed buildings, stretching several stories high. Though, likely by the Emperor's blessing, one of the centerpiece structures appeared to be intact. Not wasting the opportunity, they infiltrated it, climbing up 5 stories, all of which were equally derelict and abandoned, until the sound felt on equal level with them. With a few quick gestures, the Commissar indicated for the commandos to sweep and secure the perimeter, while the rest advanced with her into the room closest to the noise. In it, the stench of death would be banished by a hotter mix of smoke and oil, pouring in from a large window hole in the wall.
Oh. Sounds like they turned the place into a mech shop, which means there's either at least one mech boy in there, or potentially a big mech. If it's a big mech, then oh boy, that is going to be a challenging fight.
As well as the no longer existing doors of a side room, which connected to another hole that was lower to the floor. Johann and Ramil secured the side room, while the rest pressed themselves against the remainder of the wall under the window hole. Carefully, Lawrence poked his head out, seeing that immediately on the other side was a slope of debris leading up to the hole in the side room, seemingly making it a door into the building. Using his binoculars, he traced down the slope, his vision ending on another set of hangars, poorly converted into workshops of some kind, and a gaggle of Xenos scurrying between them.
Contact. Straight ahead. I'm counting 10, no, 13 small fries and 4 orcs.
Dusk reported as Katerina herself poked her head out and confirmed the terrain of her position.
Whatever value this place may have had is stashed down there.
She muttered as she observed the enemy position before asking,
Estimation of the force threat level?
Suboptimal. They seem to be slightly bigger than Monkey. Cleanup shouldn't be too... oh, fuck. So, make that 5. And that one is problematic.
The Cadian's tone shifted from neutral to a concerned one as he handed the binoculars to Arconi. Looking through it, she could see the cause of his concern. Out of a nearby workshop walked out another orc, towering by a full head over the others, clad in what seemed like a repair servitor's attire, and with a strange mechanical contraption strapped to his back, which crackled with energy. Its bulk also seemed to be close to double that of the other orcs, as it began shouting at one of them and smacked it in the side with a giant wrench, sending it sliding on the ground.
Okay, so in that case, definitely sounds like a big mech, and the ones with them must be relatively fresh orc boys, I assume. For them to be only slightly larger than a human, granted. The Catachan is quite well muscled, but still.
Perimeter clear and secure.
Gargota's voice interrupted the sightseeing as she and Gus returned to the squad.
Good work. I need a report on any other breaches besides the ones here.
We only came across one that extends 2 floors down and exits at the base of the rubble pile that reaches up to this floor.
Taking Gargota's words into consideration, the Commissar brought a fist over her lips in thought. Shortly after, her pondering was interrupted by the roar of an engine. Peeking out again, they spotted a ramshackle vehicle approaching the larger orc's location at significant speed. With a swerve, it stopped itself within a man's length away from him, following which 3 more orcs stepped off from it. One was about the same size as the large one, while the 2 others were more akin to the smaller ones. As the aliens approached each other, Arconi glanced at the Armageddon and asked,
Lieutenant Steelix, how much expertise do you have when it comes to greenskins? Are you able to understand their speech?
It's possible to understand those things speaking?
Richard mumbled out, but was duly ignored.
Affirmative. Distance might make it a bit difficult to hear, but the acoustics might be just fine.
Well, if I remember correctly, while to us, the orcs basically just speak Cockney, in actual 40k, if I remember correctly, they just speak a dialect of Low Gothic, don't they?
Upon stating so, Gargota also pressed herself next to the cover and leaned as much as possible towards the window hole without revealing herself.
Two Club Slot-Rail, what the song are you doing here? Me and the lads just got our snazwagon chopped out of the scrap heaps, but it's missing the boom and the decker for it can be a proper snazwagon. So before we come to the base, this make boy this side of the pointy huts, so cruncher.
Duke Club appeared extremely excited as he presented, striking a pose at the end as he pointed with both hands at the mech. But after a couple of moments of seeing no reaction, he shifted to a casual stance and tone.
Like, we need some gubbins and decker for it. Can you paint it red? Like real fast, 'cause we gots to go. Bestest! Ha!
Saw cr-
So, red paint job, and some extra firepower for it. And they're in a hurry. Although... Well, I hope he has the teeth to pay for that, because, for those who don't know, yeah, orcs use their own teeth as currency.
Cruncha mockingly laughed before talking back with obvious irritation in his voice.
I mean, the only make boy this side of the pointy huts. Wasn't even a day since the shops got set up when the boss looted all the flashiest scrap, daka and gubbins in this stupid place. And soon as he did that, he took all the mechs off to some big Ayumi place. Let me in charge of scrapping what's left there, but only with green gits rolled out of the ground.
As he said so, the mech glanced to the side, spotting one of his subordinate orcs bending a plate of scrap metal, prompting him to barge over and yell.
No, you stupid git! This here's supposed to be a faceplate for a killer can, not a bike frame. You have to make it smooth and curved. Go fix it now!
The tirade was followed by a vicious smack from Sawcrunch's wrench, knocking out a couple of teeth from the smaller orc, who then ran away to fix his mistake, as a nearby grot picked up the teeth and climbed up on the mech's shoulder, then deposited them in a pouch on his apron.
At least
Free money.
one of yous knows how to work, right? Right, so you're gonna fix me snazwagon with some red and daka, You're gonna need teeth.
Duklub searched his pockets for a brief moment before pulling them out and revealing that they contained nothing.
Nah, I punched me lads in and outies for the red service and getting the wagon in the first place.
Sawcrunch smacked a hand over his face, the impact reverberating throughout the fields.
I swear I'ma punch your own teeth out. Ever since the boss left, it's been nothing but pansies and gits coming by, making idiotic requests.
As he spoke, he approached the snaz wagon and inspected it.
Like this bozo bucket dome. Moron thinks he's so special just 'cause he be almost big enough to be an ob. What's he done to get you so worked up, Mick? Took a bunch of me grots to go looting down south, including me lucky grot. He's a great grot, very observant, spots little things a lot. I swear to more.
Wait a minute. Is this gonna turn out to be that orc that they encountered, or in the much earlier, the one that almost spotted them because Dusk missed a few shots, and oh yeah, and the grot that nearly that was trying to tell the orc to look over, and then yeah, that lucky grot definitely isn't coming back. The big one was also the one that that Gargota and the monkey ended up killing, though. What I think. Oh.
Look, if he don't bring it to me in one piece, next time he brings his scrapjet for fixing, I'ma paint his engine yellow and put explosive squig in the propeller.
Club shuddered at the thought.
Oi, that's an it-canning scheme right there, so Cruncher. You's definitely the best big boy round. Guess to be worried the boss made you boss of this place.
The wrathful expression on the mech boy's face shifted into one of confusion, then into a satisfied smile as his brain processed the driver orc's words.
You know what? You're right. I do be pretty great. Must be why the boys believed in me. You know what? We got some spare red I can hook you up with. But Daka, you gotta find yourself.
After saying so, Saw Cruncher called out to the closest orc.
Oi, go squeeze out 2 more Yumes, then feed the rest of the guard squig. We'll be doing some painting.
Well, what are they saying?
Well, that explains where orcs always get so much red, quote-unquote, paint from wherever they go.
It's a bit hard to pin the dialect, but from what I could piece together, the one that stepped off of the vehicle was bartering to have it refitted and repainted. The one that looks like a tech adept barely agreed after venting about how their leader moved the majority of their troops to a location that is either larger than this one or more heavily populated. He also complained about how a higher-ranking Xeno took some of his standing forces to conduct raids in the southern region of the Hive.
Upon mentioning that, Lawrence was hit by a small realization, prompting him to ask Gargota.
Did he say anything more specific about the higher ranking orc? Any description or the like?
She shrugged in response before adding.
He called him Bucket Dome, I think. Also made a particular note of a lucky grot, which was good at spotting things.
Hearing this, Richard was struck with the same realization as he looked to the sergeant.
Could it be?
Dusk nodded in affirmation, following which he spoke.
I think this might be in reference to the large orc me and the kid encountered before the squad was assembled. The same one you and the Katachan killed.
With those words, everyone shifted their gaze towards the orcish head impaled on the spear harnessed on the Armageddon's back. While the rest were mulling over the coincidence of the situation, Katerina bit her lip and then spoke up.
Everyone, give up. I have a plan.
Oi!
A soft bellow caught the attention of the large orcs, prompting them to turn around and look at the decrepit shell of the building looming over their section of the fields.
Oi! Can you kids hear me?
Within a hole in the wall, the head of an orc that was clearly bigger than the pair was poking out, glaring at them, albeit seeming a bit more wobbly than normal.
Yous know this git? I think, but that can't be him. He's not looking right. But
Saw Cruncher squinted his eyes before they widened in disbelief, and he yelled.
Oi, Bucket Loom! Where have you been? And why is your voice sounding all funny?
Drank a tanko, me, full?
Drank a tango, you me fuel? Soak.
Saw Cruncher cursed under his breath and turned to Club.
No kid ever listens to me. I keep telling them, don't know them the Yumi stuff, cause it's bad for you. Just know them the Yumis, but no, let's just ignore the big boy.
Following which he yelled back at his superior.
Whatever. Do you got me lucky grot with you?
Yes, with me, alright.
Well, bring him over.
I can't.
Why?
I'm stuck.
How?
We got covered in some sticky stuff. That's why we stuck here in front. It is all.
Make him say something. I wanna hear him.
Can't. He's got the sticky stuff on his face. Can't talk.
By this point, Saw Cruncho was squeezing his head in both hands out of frustration.
You!
He bellowed at one of the smaller orcs.
Go up there and get me grot, for I go up there and snake nuggets.
As the servile greenskin rushed towards and then up the pile of rubble, all eyes were on him, due to which no one spotted the shapes that skulked about on the side, obscured by the settled destruction. He stepped in through the smaller hole on the side as it was easier to go through, and then turned to go in the next room. To his shock, instead of a knob candidate and a grot covered in something sticky, he saw a Humy in a fancy blue getup, holding a stick that had the talking head impaled on it, and another less fancy Humy sitting next to him, both glaring daggers at the new arrival.
What the?
In a near instant, before his mouth or brain could process what was happening, a strong hand grabbed his face from the right and pulled, exposing his neck, as a decently sized knife was sunk in the back of his head, while from the left came an upward swing of an activated power sword, severing the confused cranium from its body, which fell backwards with a quiet thud. A few minutes had passed by now, causing the mech boy to grow more agitated. Impatiently he yelled towards the building.
Oi! Did you get me grot? What the zog is happening up there?
The head of the boy he had sent up there sprang up next to that of Bucket Dome, and replied in basically the same voice as him.
Sorry, boss. Got stuck in that sticky stuff too. Can you send me some else? Tacoma, please?
Who does it? I'm snicking him, Bo.
Saw Cruncher bellowed in frustration and stomped off to his workshop.
Grots, prepare me Saw Cruncher right now.
Barely a couple of steps forward, the orc halted in his tracks due to the loud clang of metal hitting pavement.
Also, just a note, the rock music from the Orc Wall banner from Dawn of War 3 it's a real banger, despite how much how I feel about Dawn of War 3. Yeah, I still enjoy that bit of music very much. Also, makes sense it was Stringstorm who made it. He's made a lot of bangers.
Every single alien turned around, mouths agape, when they saw the Krieger, Maccabian, and Cadian, along with the Brotelian who had tripped on an oil spill and into the barrels the group had used for cover.
Humans!
The greenskins bellowed and sprang to action.
Shit.
Katerina cursed as she got up from their cover.
Monkey, with me! You too! Cover fire now!
With those words, she bolted out of the building, readying her power saber and bolt pistol, followed by the Katachan, who threw off the small orc's head from his knife and brandished it along with a second one.
Wait, both of us? Doesn't the old man need a scope?
Gergoda briefly questioned the order, but before she could finish, the Morgan threw away the spear with the impaled head and rested his triplex over the window hole and yelled,
Shut up and fire!
Following which he did as commanded, his first shot splattering the head of one of the grots with surprising precision, despite the distance and him only using iron sights.
He's quite the crack shot. You know, Cost also gives me, me vibes of that saying about beware an old man in a profession where men die young.
Momentarily surprised, the Armageddon quickly hefted her own long las on the improvised railing and joined him in sniping down the enemy. As soon as the sniper fire began, Saw Cruncher booked it for his workshop, with the only pause to his focus being to yell at a nearby orc.
Get the guard, Squig! Get stuck in, boys!
Dukla bellowed, rousing the remainder of the greenskins to battle. He intended to fire off a few rounds of his shooter in order to better emphasize the war cry, but just as he took it out of his holster on his hip, his head was melted from Gruber's hellgun. Despite the larger orc's body falling back like a sack of potatoes, the rest of the greenskins were undeterred and rushed against the invading guardsmen, who responded in kind along with a torrent of las fire. The sole exception to the offensive was Bobson, who was not able to get up in time, resigning himself to provide hasty cover fire from a sitting position. Due to the unfavorable angle and the duress of actual combat, however, he was only able to gun down 2 Gretchen before 3 others swarmed him. 2 of them were disarmed and began gnawing on his legs, while the third leaped onto the private's chest, pinning him to the ground, and began to viciously stab with a sharpened piece of metal, forcing Richard to frantically grab for its arms in order to prevent it from skewering him. It had become obvious that the initial estimation of the enemy forces had been incorrect, as many more grots began pouring out from among the hangar buildings, along with a handful of orcs. While the Cadian and the Maccabian focused on thinning their numbers as they advanced, the Krieger focused on taking down the orcs due to his heavier armament. As Johann was about to press forward after the corporal and the sergeant, after having dispatched the pair of boys that came along with Dew Club, he heard the Brotelian sounds of struggle. He turned to confirm his status, and in a single moment, disgust, disappointment, and the thought of just abandoning the PDF to his fate zapped through his mind. But in the next, Katarina's orders replaced those thoughts.
Scheisse.
Just as the Gretchen atop the Brotelian managed to wrestle his stabbing arm out of the man's grip.
By the way, I do find it quite funny that the assigned medic is the one carrying the heaviest armaments out of the group.
And raised it for a finishing blow, its upper body vanished in a flash of red light, the contents of its lower abdomen spilling over Richard, who felt intense heat over his face, as if he had a burning torch held mere centimeters away from it. The sudden reduction of struggle made the 2 other diminutive greenskins cease their biting, as they lifted their heads to see what was happening. It was at that moment that the Krieger's boot impacted the head of one of them, sending him flying into the other, and subsequently into the nearby metal barrels. Both grots bounced off with a loud gong sound from the empty barrels, and fell to the ground unmoving. The private barely registered what was happening before the terrifying mask of Johann loomed over and yelled at him.
Get up, useless!
Following which, the grenadier once again rushed after the other pair. A shaken and hyperventilating Richard hastily picked up his assigned lasgun and scurried to his feet, then forward into assault, the adrenaline surging through his system, allowing him to ignore the injuries inflicted to his legs for the time being. The remaining pair of the Gittish orcs who were initially sighted had gone to cover behind some metal crates, firing their shooters at the assaulting formation, trying to hold out until their reinforcements arrived. A hope that was hard-pressed to be fulfilled, both because said reinforcements were getting picked off by Kost and Steelix, and because their position would be assaulted from the flank by Arconian Wildknife's charge. Gus was the first to reach the pair, sinking his knives into the neck of one and slicing its head off. This, however, made the other orc aware of them, so it backpedaled towards the workshop as the commissar lunged at it. The second lieutenant was about to jump in and assist her in the matter when he saw 2 more orcs rushing from the buildings on the side, armed with choppas.
Bogies on their 9, sir. I got him.
Katarina did not give any acknowledgement to his words, as she believed in the Catachan to deal with the matter as he had promised, so she instead focused on pressing her attack on the greenskin before her, using only her saber for now in order to preserve her bolt rounds. As he was about to enter the mech boy's workshop, the smaller orc was slammed by something metallic from the side and was then splattered against the building's wall. Out of the workshop stepped Sawcruncha, looming over Arconi with both of his arms encased in metal, one ending in a spinning buzzsaw and the other in a large mechanical claw.
Ah, I see why he has the name Sawcruncher now.
Gritting her teeth, the commissar pointed the bolt pistol at him and fired twice as she yelled,
Die, filth!
Unfortunately for her, the mech boy was able to lift his claw just in time to make the 2 bolt rounds bounce up into the doorframe of the workshop. He then closed the distance with a bellow of forcing.
I take that as a good sign for their odds. Odds that Sawcruncher doesn't have a custom force field like many mech boys and big mechs end up making.
Katarina to go on the defensive, evading the swipes of both of his armaments. On the opposite side of the field, Lawrence and Ramil had split up as they chased down the now running Gretchen. The Maccabian cornered the last 3 in one of the shoddy constructions of the greenskins and mercilessly gunned them down. However, their coming here was more of a trap for him than for themselves, as when the last grot was splattered, Sawcrunch's guard squig burst from the wall onto his side, tackling the man to the ground, as the orc sent to get him followed. Before he could disengage into a more favorable stance, Burgundy found himself in the jaws of the beast, who had chomped on his torso from the side. Deeming him snicked, the orc just ran by, armed with a shooter and ready to engage the scrap. By some miracle, however, while the squig was big enough to tackle and thrash its target, the vicious flesh ball with teeth lacked the bite force to pierce the corporal's carapace chest guard. Unable to get a good shot among the thrashing, Ramil instead flipped his hold on his lasgun and sank its bayonet up to the muzzle into the monster's skull, then twisted it several times. Its movement ceased near instantly, allowing him to stand up and rush after the orc, while firing at it. One of his shots pierced the back of the greenskin's leg, causing it to stumble and hold. Before it could turn around and react, the steel of the bayonet found itself at the base of its spine. Mustering all of his strength and zeal, Ramil let out a wrathful cry as he pushed his lasgun upwards, cutting open the length of the orc's back and forcing it to fall forward on its face. Still under the influence of bloodlust, he then put 3 shots into the alien's head, splattering it completely, before he returned to his senses and ran back to the main engagement.
Some people may call that bloodlust. I see that as entirely warranted, actually, given what orcs have been known to survive.
In the meantime, Lawrence's prey led him to one of the larger hangars. Something had roared out of it before they had reached it, which had made the Cadian approach with more caution.
Oh no.
He poked the muzzle of his lasgun from the side of the entrance, which was met with a surge of Daka pouring out, prompting him to pull back. About 10 seconds later, the shooting ceased, followed by several chitters of worry. That is when the sergeant rushed in, gunning down 4 grots as the remaining 3 scattered to all sides like vermin. Among the darkness of the hangar, Dusk was pleasantly surprised to see a few trucks. Proper Imperial trucks. Nearly all appeared to be gutted for parts, but one seemed to be completely intact. Immediately, the Cadian moved in and began sweeping between the vehicles in order to clear the place out and protect the hardware. However, as he did so, he found no trace of the vile Xenos.
I will say, given how sneaky grots can be, you still gotta be careful. And, small and weak as they are, small, weak, and cowardly as they are, grots still can pose quite a bit of a threat to a human, because even the pistols that they'll carry fire some pretty hefty rounds.
When the thought that they had run out began to creep into his mind, it was dashed away as one of the grots jumped on his shoulders from atop the truck, locking its legs around his neck, and began clawing at his face, which was thankfully protected by his helmet and visor. With the man distracted, the second greenskin jumped out from under one of the trucks and stabbed Lawrence in the thigh with a small knife, while the third actually attempted to run out of the hangar. Reeling from the pain, the Cadian booted the Xenos at his feet, sending it into a nearby wall. In a single motion, he then grabbed the arm of the one on him and threw it at the escapee, both tumbling down. Several last shots shredded through the pair, after which the last grot barely came back to consciousness when Dusk loomed over it and stomped its head into the wall. Near the main workshop,
I've been enjoying this story, and I also just enjoyed even more, or seeing that, for one, these guardsmen, their armor is actually worth something. And, I get that, the whole t-shirts and flashlights thing is a meme. But it is nice to see guardsmen not end up in situations where their, las guns and armor are essentially flashlights and t-shirts compared to what they're facing. Especially seeing this group actually take down so many orcs and grots without losing anyone. It's just nice to actually, see guardsmen doing well and not being slaughtered by the dozen.
Gus had rushed the incoming orcs, who quickly surrounded him but were finding it very difficult to land a strike with their choppas on him. Being of similar size to him, their physical attributes were not overwhelming enough to make up for the sheer difference in skill when it came to armed CQC. In comparison to his fluid dodges and parries, the greenskins were doing no better than flailing at him. Their advantage, however, came in the form of their natural durability, as the Cut's wild knife was able to land on them amidst the fighting, could not penetrate deep enough to kill. That is when his ears picked up the roar that Lawrence had heard near the hangar he took over. The roar of an engine, a loud gun, and of idiots. Sidestepping a stab at his back, he whirled and struck the orc in the back of the head with the pommel of his knife, causing the greenskin to go past him and bump into the other one who had stabbed forward. Having broken out of the surround, the second lieutenant dashed back, jumping behind a stack of the metallic crates as 2 lines of Daka were poured into the alcove, shredding the chopper-wielding orcs.
I see what he meant by the sound of idiots.
A red war buggy was madly dashing towards the fight, peppering its way with ordnance. Pinned down, Gus let out a loud whistle, then...
Wait, is that a cup holder? I don't know, there's just something funny I find about that cup holder there. Especially since the way it's bolted on too, it's like... It looks like it could fall off any second, but then again, that's also applies to actually a lot of stuff on vehicles.
Made several quick hand gestures. Just as the buggy was about to run over his hiding spot, several last shots found their mark in its front wheels, blasting them apart and causing the speeding vehicle to slam its front into the pavement and flip over the crates, before crashing down belly up on the opposite side of them. Both the driver and the gunner had miraculously survived, but were now pinned under their transport's corpse. As they squirmed to get out, the Catachan ran towards them and jumped over the wrecked war buggy, after leisurely throwing a frag grenade to roll towards its occupants.
Oh, so no.
The pair cried out right before the explosive rolled up to their faces and then shredded them. All the while, Gus walked away from the wreck with a satisfied smile on his face, before giving a salute of appreciation to Gargota. She in turn chuckled at the display, before returning to clearing out the reinforcing Gretchen, who by now had stopped appearing, indicating that their reserves were depleted. At the front of the engagement, Katerina's duel with Sawcruncher was not going too well. Despite his bulk and that of his contraption, the Xenos was exceptionally quick, and the power of his strikes meant that she could not afford to try parrying, let alone blocking anything, forcing her strictly into evasion, as he maintained the melee and did not allow her a good opportunity to use the bolt pistol.
Well, good thing then that that she showcased how quick and flexible she is. This last episode.
Her one saving grace was that despite their power, his moves were predictable. After barely avoiding a slash from the saw which left a tear and a thin bloody gash in her pistol arm, right below the shoulder, Arconi decided to instead focus on finishing him off with her saber. Mentally mapping out his attack pattern, she began stepping forward, giving him momentary pause for a change with her attempts to breach his defenses. It would be in several more strikes that she found the opening she needed, at which point she ducked under a swipe from the saw, causing the beast to chuckle grimly.
Oh.
Considering the circumstances, that was a strange thing for him to do, but shortly after she noticed the reason for it. He had baited her with his mediocre fighting skills into believing the opening was genuine, but just as she had crouched to avoid the saw, a backhand from the claw, which had flattened the other orc, was now flying towards her, and she would not be able to avoid it.
Oh, this one's a smart boy.
Split Second stood between her and Grizzly Doom, her mind frantically searching for a solution, until, in a blend of pure instinct and tactical brilliance, she used her crab position to jump backwards, and when the claw struck, she grasped onto it, allowing her body to be carried by its momentum instead of trying to stop it. Arconi had avoided being splattered, but now found herself in the unenviable position of clinging onto the orc's claw.
What? Suck off me, Cruncher!
Sawcruncher yelled at her as he began to furiously flail his claw arm. But in peak Hume rudeness, the lady with the pointy hat refused his polite request and instead held on for dear life, using this as a reprieve with which to come up with a plan of action. It was then that the Mordian had finished clearing the last wave of grots he was focusing on and spotted their scuffle.
Oh man, that scowl. Someone's about to have a very bad day.
Grimacing under his cap, Kost reached towards his lasgun's dial and slammed the triplex into its maximum fire setting.
Move to the side unless you want to roast.
Maximum setting, or some people like to call it the fuck that particular thing over there up the ass setting.
He commanded to Steelix. Initially confused, she stepped to the side, giving him ample space to operate. Utterly consumed by rage due to his brilliant maneuver being foiled, the MechBoy had become almost feral in its trashing, until finally he lifted up his saw arm and swung down in an attempt to split Katarina's head. Before it could land, however, a shot pierced through the scrap of the claw arm, puncturing the orc's shoulder, which destabilized his motion, resulting in the saw going through his claw arm, sawing it off at the bicep. The commissar fell on her back, still clutching the claw, as the MechBoy yelled in pain and cursed about his good arm. In the middle of the cursing, another hotshot penetrated the power pack on his back, causing its energies to begin flaring up.
Oh no.
No, not the pack! Not the pack!
Saw
Yeah, things made by orcs tend to be temperamental at the best of times. If I was a commissar, I'd be getting far away before that blows.
Crunchy yelled, fear present on his face, as he spun around his axis, trying to take off the pack with his bleeding stump and saw. Not wasting any time from this given opportunity, Katarina quickly stood up and took aim, before sending a bolt straight into the power pack as well. Her opponent had only a second to stare at her, and just as he was about to use some filthy Xeno word at her, the pack, and his upper body, exploded in a shower of gore. Breathing heavily, Arconi shook her head and then called out to the squad.
Kill them all! Leave no stinking sinners alive! For the Emperor!
Less than 10 minutes later, the area was cleansed of greenskins. After he was done administering the required amount of medical attention to those in need of it, Johann, along with Gus, began gathering the aliens' bodies in one place, which would be turned into a pyre, set up to then burn down the rest of the fields, as to prevent their spores from taking root.
Also, Johann is excellent at doctor-assisted homicide.
While the rest, save for Katarina, who was overseeing the matters, and Lawrence, who was tasked with getting the truck he had secured ready for travel, were gathering whatever supplies they could salvage. The only one sticking out like a sore thumb was Richard. After the battle had ended, everyone, including Lawrence, had become much colder than usual to him, which, along with the threatening scolding given to him by the commissar, had further beaten out any positive emotions previously left in him. He was carrying 2 large tubs of fuel to the hangar, where Dusk was conducting repairs and maintenance.
Reporting in with the last of the fuel we found. With these stored, we're done loading.
He sheepishly addressed the sergeant.
Yeah, just get them on. I'm busy now. Oh, now, how did the toaster lady used to do the company centaur?
Lowering his head at
Toaster lady. So a female tech priest.
the cold response, the Brotelian left the Cadian to continue mulling over what he remembered about vehicle repair and to perform the necessary sermons for its machine spirit. With all of the supplies loaded, the squad boarded. The captain helmed the wheel, being the only properly experienced driver among them, with the commissar seated next to him and the first lieutenant seated on the opposite side of the frontmost seat, overlooking the terrain from that side of the vehicle. The second lieutenant, sergeant, corporal, and quartermaster occupied the seating area behind them, and in the far back, Richard sat among the supplies, tasked with fixing up the damaged uniforms. Kost started the engine without much ceremony, and their squad was off, leaving behind the inferno of the Emperor's Springfields. Gargota looked back at the fire with a hint of melancholy, before facing forward and muttering.
That sure reminds me of home. The season of fire must be happening just now.
After no one gave a reaction to her words, she instead turned her head to look at Dan, with a polite smile on her features, and asked,
Say, old man, you were really impressive back there. How come you can shoot so well without using any kind of scope?
I have a feeling that what he's going to say is going to be practice. 'Cause, well,
In response, the Mordian would slowly turn his head to look back at her, although his cap prevented her from seeing his eyes, and then, just as slowly, looked back at the road, uttering only a single word.
Practice.
That answer left the Armageddon slightly puzzled, but also disappointed by the prospect of this being a silent trip. Katerina, on the other hand, chuckled at it. Richard would have loved to vocalize a laugh at the situation, as he did find it amusing, but he remained silent, sewing up the uniforms. As he did so, among the spare pieces of cloth that had been gathered up in the truck, he spotted a couple that really caught his attention. Out of nowhere, the grim feeling in his heart was replaced with the spark of inspiration, as he folded those pieces and set them aside for later. For now, he would focus on his assigned task.
oh, those sewing skills definitely coming in handy. I wonder what he's thinking of doing with those cloth scraps. Maybe making a banner or something? A little something to help morale.
Special thanks to all these gits that help make this possible. Remember to like and subscribe, and check him out in the description below. Hope you enjoyed this here story, and we's looking to see you back next time. Can I go now, Yumi?
No.
Also, is that a microphone that Orc is holding?
Oh.
Yeah, this is really fun to watch. And I'm looking forward to reacting to episode 3. Again, I'm sorry it's taken so long, but, you know, couldn't really be helped. Computer wasn't working properly. And once again, and if you guys aren't already subscribed to KRissCHu's Shed, I'd highly recommend you do so. Definitely go and like the original video, show him some love. And if you enjoyed it watching with me and seeing me react to this, I'd appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe. But until next time, ta-ta, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.